Is your sign a thinker or a feeler? Answering this question is going to be very beneficial in understanding the natural role that you play in relationships, and it will give you insight into why you approach certain situations in life the way that you do. So in this video, I will break down which signs are thinkers and which signs are feelers, how that is determined, and I will also go over the weekly poll question related to this topic along with some featured comments. And make sure to stick around to the end of this video where I give you some effective ways to apply this information to your life. Okay, no more wasting time. Let's go. Well, first it's necessary to understand that in order to determine which signs are thinkers and which signs are feelers, we must first break down how astrology defines masculine and feminine energy. When it comes to astrology, masculine energy does not mean male and feminine energy does not mean female. Even more importantly, masculine energy does not mean positive and more powerful than, and feminine energy does not mean negative and weaker than. In astrology, the signs are divided into two groups known as the signs duality, and these two groups are Group 1, the masculine, and Group 2, the feminine. Now, the masculine signs are the signs that are direct with their energy and they find strength in taking physical action. The feminine signs are more contained with their energy and they find their strength through inner reserve. Now, keep in mind, all signs have both energies within them. This just determines which side of that energy expresses itself more in each sign. Also, keep in mind that this does not mean that feminine signs don't take action. They can be very action-oriented. It's just when they have an inclination to take action, they finalize that decision whether to do so based more so on how they feel about something as opposed to what they think about it. So the signs that are considered the masculine signs are Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius. Now, I can't express enough that we all do have both. Everyone thinks and everyone feels, but this determines which you tend to lean on more when you're processing the world around you and or expressing yourself. So these masculine signs tend to be thinkers and process the world around them through the logical side of their brain as opposed to the emotional, more creative side. So the signs that are considered the feminine signs are Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. So these feminine signs tend to process the world around them through the more creative and emotional part of their brain, still using their logical brain, just leaning a bit more on one side than the other. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Let me give you an example of how this might manifest in someone's personality. If you take someone who is Libra sun with Sagittarius moon and Scorpio rising, you will find that the way someone first perceives them based on their Scorpio rising would be someone that is more inner directed with their energy, someone who finds their strength in their inner reserve. However, once you get to know this person a bit more, when they're navigating their day-to-day life and operating from their Libra sun sign, they will be perceiving the world around them much more through their logical perspective as opposed to an emotional perspective. Also, remember your rising sign indicates how you instinctually respond to something when you're either surprised by it or taken off guard. So this person may initially have an emotional response based on that Scorpio rising, but then very quickly shift to that logical perspective based in that Libra energy before taking action based in some sort of emotion. Not to mention, although Scorpio may be the knee-jerk reaction, even when the emotions kick in this person's personality, they're going to shift to Sagittarius because that's their moon sign, how they're wired emotionally, which is masculine energy, so it's more logical than emotional. And when this gets really interesting is when this person does get emotional, especially when in a romantic relationship, remembering that in our romantic relationships, most of the time, since we're operating from our emotions, we'll be operating from our moon sign, then this person will be expressing their thoughts as opposed to expressing their feelings when they're communicating about something. Whereas if you have someone that is Sagittarius sun with Scorpio moon and Pisces rising, well, this person will be initially perceived in a very similar way because of the rising sign as someone that's more inner directed, and then in their day-to-day activities and interactions operating from their sun sign, they will be more outwardly directed and finding strength through action and perceiving the world through their intellect. But in a romantic relationship, when they get emotional or when they get upset, they'll be operating much more from their moon sign. So as they express themselves, they're going to express how they feel about whatever the topic is. Now, this is the topic that was touched on in last week's poll question, where I asked, in a romantic relationship, although both are extremely important, if you had to prioritize one over the other in terms of what you would require to be fulfilled, would you rather have your thoughts, suggestions, and wants respected, or your feelings protected, cherished, and honored. Now, I did this poll because it would help to establish whether or not you are more of a thinker or a feeler. Now, the 43% of you that voted to have your thoughts or suggestions and wants respected, you would be considered more thinkers. And the 57% of you that voted to have your feelings protected, cherished, and honored, well, you would be considered to be more feelers. Now, I say more because everyone is both. This is why we want both in a relationship, but in the balance of a relationship, it is really helpful to establish which one you lean on more. So knowing how to break down your chart could be helpful when it comes to understanding yourself and understanding the person that you're in a relationship with. Also, if you're the type of person that really connects to the idea of traditional roles in a romantic relationship, then this information can help you understand why it may be hard to maintain that traditional balance, even though that might be what you want. For example, Kat M commented, "Why do I feel more like the masculine energy and the 3 Leo men that I've dated were all feminine Leo energy?" Well, it would be really interesting to see the chart of the Leo men that Kat is referring to, because they may have very well had a moon or rising or other placements that are in earth or water, which would lend to them being more emotionally driven in terms of how they approach situations, especially a relationship if their moon is earth or water. So in some instances, it's about recognizing your tendencies based on your chart. And then if you want to step into a more feeler role, embracing what that would mean in terms of your approach and then making those adjustments. Now, there are many other placements and influences that play a part in a person's energy, like whether they're a cardinal sign or they're a fixed sign or they're a mutable sign. Also, whether they're male or female. And when it comes to a relationship, whether they're in a same-sex relationship. And of course, a person's environment and experiences are going to play a huge part. But hopefully this information is helpful to you as you navigate life and your relationships, especially when it comes to communication. Now, there were many comments on this poll that were saying that the two options were pretty much one and the same. Like Tay, who said, "The two go hand in hand and make way for each other in my opinion," which I absolutely agree with. They do go hand in hand and they do actually make way for each other, but it is very useful to determine which one you lean on more than the other. If you can determine that, it can really help in terms of navigating relationships. So let me give an example of where it can be effective in terms of communication and reaching resolution if you identify which one is the priority for you, because it can really determine how to best express yourself. Now, if you're upset and you say, "I am sad," then the person that you're in a relationship with, they can't look at you and say, "No, you're not." They can't say, "No, you're not sad." The solution would then be you telling them what they can do to make you feel better, because for you, the priority is making sure that the person loves you enough to do what it takes to make you feel better if you're upset. Okay, so that's someone who prioritizes their feelings. However, if your priority is equally having your feelings cherished and your thoughts respected, then you would not only say, "I'm sad," but then you would also start to explain why you're sad, because you want that person not only to do what it takes to make you feel better, but you also want them to understand where you're coming from. And that approach will more times than not spark a debate, because if you say to someone, "I'm sad," because you're acting like you didn't care, well, be ready for the person that you're talking to say, "I do care." You're seeing it in the wrong way, and the debate will begin because thoughts are debatable. They are all based on your perspective, which is fine if you're okay with now not only being sad, but instead of your sadness being tended to, you also want your thoughts respected. So now you have to head to the debate podium to state your case and be ready for the opposing side to state theirs. Thinkers don't mind debating for days because they're all about making sure they prove their point. That's their priority. But then they aren't too worried about their feelings. They're not going to say you hurt my feelings because you disagreed with me. They're down to debate and get to the point. But if you want both equally, that's a tall order and can lead to much more conflict. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be respected. Of course, your ideas and your thoughts should always be respected, but there is a time and a space to decide which matters more. It goes back to that saying, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Some people just want to be right and aren't too concerned with emotional satisfaction. They want to prove their point, they want to be understood, they want to be heard, and some people want to be happy, not caring too much if you think that they're right or wrong. They just want to make sure that you love them enough to do what it takes to make them feel loved. But if you want to be happy and you want to be right, that's definitely a harder road to travel. If you're in a relationship with someone who's predominantly a feeler and they're upset about something, the best thing you can do is find out what you can do to make them feel better, an action that can be taken. The worst thing that you can do is tell them that they are overreacting or tell them why they shouldn't feel the way that they feel. Now, if you're in a relationship with a thinker, you'll find that the majority of the time, what angers them is when you are questioning their judgment or giving them advice that they didn't ask for or attempting to parent or control them in some way. So giving them space to make their own decisions and then support those decisions, that's going to be very effective in keeping the connection. And if you do have a suggestion, communicating that suggestion to them by saying, if there's anything you need, let me know. I'm here for you, and I have a few thoughts and ideas if you'd like to hear them. That sort of approach will work wonders. It will definitely work much better than unsolicited advice. So prioritizing one over the other can help you reach resolutions much more quickly. That way you'll spend less time debating and more time being in love and having fun. Okay, so there you have it. Thank you guys so much for weighing in on this topic and sharing your thoughts. Make sure you weigh in on this week's question. I post them every Monday morning. And remember, I am a firm believer that you can be with anyone if you're in love and both of you are committed to growing together, having great communication, and always doing your part to stay connected. You know what I always say, love. That's all, and that's enough. I hope you all enjoyed the information. If you did, please don't forget the baby tap. Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with me. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.